name is Micah. That's Kris. And Kris, I want to hear all the news that's going on around the league.
Well, we got some breaking news today. Which happened just right before our pod. Doc Rivers has been signed with the Sixers. So he's going to be the head coach going forward for that club. Playoff baseball heating up. We saw a few eliminations there. We'll talk about that in a minute. We also have seen an outbreak of COVID cases around NFL and the NCAA, which we will talk about later in our pod. And the NBA Finals have just started, and the Heat losing first game. Lakers are now up 1-0. So moving on to the MLB, as you see, big fan of the baseball, got all the hats going on here. We have seen a few eliminations. We have seen the Oakland A's taking out the White Sox in a 2-1 victory, in a series victory. The Yankees sweeping the Indians. Tampa Bay also sweeping the Blue Jays. Atlanta sweeping the Reds in the National League. Houston back in the American League taking out Minnesota Twins. And teams that are still in the hunt right now are, we got the Dodgers and Brewers still facing off. Padres and Cardinals are right now battling while we're recording this, so we'll give updates as the game does. And before that, Dodgers and Cardinals are up 1 on a series. And then our last game is Marlins versus Cubs. Marlins are up 1-0, but the second game has been delayed due to weather. Micah, a couple of our teams have been eliminated in this playoff, so we only have a handful of teams left.
Big shock yesterday with the AL and how many teams didn't make it out. Shout out to the Oakland Athletics for holding their own against the Sox, Houston holding their own against the Twins, Yankees holding their own against Cleveland, and Tampa Bay making it all the way. Hopefully, the Yankees can pull it out against Tampa Bay as well for the Athletics and all the other teams that we have chosen. So to move on, Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier are in talks of having a sparring match, not affiliated with the UFC, no title fight, just as a charity event for both of them to get to respective charities. Dustin Poirier is going to be fighting for his foundation, which is the Good Fight Foundation. They have a lot of impact within Thanksgiving food drives, regular food drives, school supplies, fighting kits for up and coming martial artists, young martial artists. I want to get into the sport, as well as a Ugandan project that they are teaming up with. McGregor is going to be also hosting for a charity of his own choosing. But as we talked about in our last podcast, both McGregor is really focused on that fight in January. It's kind of confirmed in January 23rd, I believe I read, against Manny Pacquiao. This spar match between Poirier and McGregor is going to be in late 2020, in December 20, or in mid-December, closer to Christmas. I think it's just a good time for both of them to be giving as much as they can to their respective charities and to everyone that is impacted both by the coronavirus as well as other impacts within other people's lives as well. Moving on to, as Kris mentioned, coronavirus cases within the NCAA and NFL. We're going to be moving on to Notre Dame, where Brian and Coach Kelly targets coronavirus outbreak to pre-game meal and vomiting players during a week 1 game, I want to say, against South Florida. Notre Dame played week 2. Sorry, Notre Dame played against South Florida. 18 players tested positive on last Monday, but the program has changed the way it will eat its pregame meals and will now have rapid antigen tests available on the sideline because of lessons learned from the outbreak. Kelly said 25 players are in isolation, 14 in quarantine, surrounding the September 19th game against South Florida, as I said. Coach Kelly said they're updating how they're going to eat their meal plan or their pregame meals, and saying they're going to go to a large convention hall, get people away from one another so that they're not face to face. Some of the concerns, some of the differences. Coach Kelly said to ESPN that he's trying to discern the differences between someone that is dehydrated in the game and someone that has effects of COVID is very tricky. is very vigilant and hoping to make progress within this tricky proposition of how to determine that. So 18 positive tests over a round of 273 tests were conducted from last Tuesday to this past Saturday. And Kelly said that 90% of the team is able to practice now. And now moving on to the NFL, the Tennessee Titans and Minnesota Vikings have closed their facilities due to positive tests for coronavirus. And Kris, take it away.
We saw the Vikings and the Titans have closed facilities due to the Titans Monday finding results that 8 of their staff members, 3 players, 5 personnel were asymptomatic with the virus. And later on this week, Vikings have cleared all the tests and they were cleared to open up facilities as of Thursday, October 1st. So they are in line to play Sunday. But the Titans had 3 more cases of players came down with the COVID-19 flu, pushing their game, which originally was scheduled against the Pittsburgh Steelers to a possible Monday as our Thursday game is now being pushed to later on in the season. We'll keep track if they come back this week, but right now, all likelihood, those 2 teams will probably play on the bye week in the future. And that kind of showcased the first cases of COVID-19 in the NFL right now. So we may see more of this coming ahead.
Ooh. Sorry we were trying to rushing through that. We kind of recorded this a little bit forward, and I kind of just realized that I stopped the recording process prematurely. So we kind of just wanted to restart, get everything that we wanted to set out. But so for the Tennessee Titans and the Minnesota Vikings situation, Tennessee Titans have closed the facility until this past Saturday after 3 players and 5 team personnel members were tested positive for coronavirus. No decision has been made on the game against Pittsburgh, which I want to say was this past Sunday, right? Or this coming Sunday?
This coming up Sunday. They posted that this game is going to be postponed to further notice. So they are treating it as a bye week for both teams right now.
Lucky them. But the Tennessee Titans facility has turned into a full-on testing site for the Tennessee Titans. It's meant for drive-through testing. Goodell's memo said all players and staff have to be tested positive, will be isolated and monitored, and their family members will be offered testing as well. For asymptomatics, those that are asymptomatic, they can come back after 10 days or after consecutive tests being negative. Kris, ironically, we talked about how well the NFL season started with no rapid positive coronavirus test for the NFL. Now that kind of this little bump in the road has hit the NFL, what do you think about the future? And do you think that more teams are going to be more precautious on what they let their players do and their personnel do when they go on these trips to other?
Yeah, so the Titans head of health, I think it was head athletic trainer, said they were going to take more precautions. This probably be a warning to other teams to showcase, like, hey, we're not invulnerable, even though it's been 3 weeks of no positive tests. We've seen in the MLB and other sports, MLB, because they're most likely NFL when they're not in a quote-unquote bubble. They came down with multiple cases of the virus through multiple teams because of one player or a handful of players leaving their so-called safety zones. We know the NFL is going to be a lot different because there's more players in the MLB, which is kind of surprising. So I can still see there's going to be a bigger outbreak within the NFL later on this season as we come close to the flu season. But it's a big warning shot for all the other NFL teams out there to step up the game to make sure that they can still play a full season.
100%. I mean, it's just a bump in the road. I don't think that it really means anything that coronavirus is spreading. We never know, though. They're obviously getting tested every day, but I hope nothing like this happens to stop the NFL season and that's going into full steam. Let's move on to the NBA, and just probably the most unpredictable / longest season that the NBA has witnessed in its entire lifetime. What do you think about before the season resumed? What did you think about the NBA starting before the bubble?
I thought there was going to be a high chance that the NBA was going to come back due to the fact that they were practically at the finish line for the NBA season. I knew some people just said, "Oh, just give the crown to the best ranked team," which at the time was the Milwaukee Bucks. As we now know, the Milwaukee Bucks have been eliminated from the playoffs, and they are nowhere close to contention of winning the NBA championship. So it's just been a weird year, as we know, like from sports to just daily life in general. So it's been crazy how the NBA did it. And another crazy thing is coming back into the NBA, they started their own bubble. And the best team in that quote-unquote bubble, the Phoenix Suns, going a perfect series, 8-0 inside the bubble, missed out on the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed about that because Devin Booker was really going off and showing his true colors, especially after that game-winning shot against the Clippers. It would have been historic if they actually would have made it instead of the Grizzlies making it to that final game. I mean, Ja has all the time in the world, but I think that just solidified his stature of his rookie year. And I hope D-Book is either looking to continue within Phoenix or trying to get out of it and trying to pursue an NBA championship like everyone is. This kind of question goes hand in hand with all the disruptions prior to the bubble or the NBA season starting within the bubble and all the rules being broken. Did you think that the disruption of the bubble rules made it kind of possible for the NBA to stop the bubble process entirely and probably just resort back to that mindset of giving it to that team that was good throughout the regular season?
100%. There were players that have left the bubble, not following the rules of the bubble. As I remember clearly of one player, I can't remember the name. You'll probably get it right when I tell the story. A player goes to grab his DoorDash order, leaving the sanctuary of the bubble, and had to be placed into a 10-day quarantine. And other stories like that. I didn't think the NBA season was going to last. I didn't think any sports teams, after they had a pandemic and players were getting sick, was going to last. But the NBA proved me wrong. They are now in the finals. We saw game one last night, and we are close to ending a whole NBA season, even though how crazy, long, unpredictable it might be. Micah, do you have any thoughts about how crazy this season was, at least the end of the season was?
This might be the first NBA season that has lasted almost a year, if you think about it, because in literally a month's time, the new NBA season should have started by now, or would have started by now. But since the coronavirus kind of postponed that, it just extended the season a little bit. And I mean, that kind of that made everyone focus back up. But the one thing that we always get into is social justice, and in combination of the events that have happened over time that the bubble was being erected, do you think that social justice assisted or tore down the importance of the NBA season?
Well, we've talked about this several times. I feel like every podcast we kind of bring this up.
Hey, it's always again and again, just to get more perspective.
But I'm sure really like the bubble, like the players have been using the bubble to talk about it more. I know Kyrie was saying that he didn't want to go to the bubble because of the injustice going on in the world, mostly in the United States. But I feel like most players would not be able to have their voice directly heard in a national wide media outside of a bubble, or just not even having a season. If they just kept it to social media, sure, it would target a lot of people in the world, but having media outlets available to them post-game, pre-game, practice, gives them the opportunity to speak out more and talk directly to the whole world about the injustice going out there.
I totally agree. Now that the finals are here, two very highly notified teams, the Miami Heat and the Lakers, are in it right now. Who do you think is going to take it? I mean, we saw game one last night, and we're recording a day on October 1st, a day after the NBA finals have started. What do you think about the Heat's chances of making it past probably one of the greatest Lakers teams of this decade?
Right now, we did see two players from Miami Heat go on injury. That's being Dragic with a foot injury, and I'm blanking on the other guy's name. Let's see if I have it right.
Adebayo?
Yes, Adebayo. Out with a shoulder injury or back injury, and they were both their teams listed out for the game 2 of the NBA Finals. So the Heat chances have been dropping. Looks like it is the Lakers team for destiny to bring a title for Kobe and LeBron to bring a championship to the LA market since he moved to that team.
Yeah, Dragic is the backup for Tyler Hero, who is now the new record holder for most points in a rookie season, and Bam Bam Adebayo is that big-ass center within the Heat's lineup. So I think the Heat's chances have gone down, but you never know with Jimmy Butler and Tyler Hero. They may have a spark this coming game and, may change the tide. Let's move on to everyone's within the NCAA, the Heisman watch, and Trevor Lawrence in control of the Heisman position. Now we can actually slow down since we were kind of in a rush. Let's take a woosah together. 1, 2, 3.
That's panic breathing. Okay, so yeah, talking about the Heisman, one of the most favorite things in NCAA football is always who's going to be winning that trophy at the end of the year. So the two favorites coming into this season was Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. Trevor Lawrence playing the ACC. They were saying that they were going to play this whole season. And Justin Fields playing the Big Ten, announced about a month ago that they were going to postpone/cancel all fall sports, including football. But in the past couple of weeks, have announced that they are going to play a limited 8-game season. 10-game season?
8.
8-game season. So his name is now going back to the Heisman watch. We've seen a few other players coming up and performing valuable for the team and putting the name of the Heisman watch, but it's these two players that are in control of the Heisman. Right now, we see Trevor Lawrence been going off as what he's been doing for the past 2 years down in Clemson, this being his final season with them, as he announced before the first game of the season. I feel like it's Trevor Lawrence is all the way. Justin Fields somehow has a magical 1 in a million season in those 8 games.
Yeah, I totally agree. Oh, sorry. I totally agree with you with the stats that I brought up from ESPN. Lawrence is in first. Justin Fields is in second. 13 of the total of the 13 first place votes are going towards Trevor Lawrence. None are going towards the remaining 5 that are in the top 6. Justin Fields is in second. Rattler from Oklahoma is third. Elinger from Texas, fourth. Derek King from Miami is fourth. And Lawrence is running back. I don't know how to say his last name. Is number 6. And honestly, I don't. It's really hard because obviously the SEC, Big 12, and ACC were always going to start. And if you ask me, and this is probably just a biased opinion, I don't think that any team that started quote unquote late or didn't have the means to start at all until the actual start of football season, that this includes their players in the AP polls. should be considered for the Heisman Trophy or even the CFP. I mean, that's my own opinion. When we get into this next topic that talks about the AP polls, you'll see some teams are 0-0, so that's obviously because they haven't started yet. But I obviously think that Trevor Lawrence is going to hopefully win the Heisman Trophy. And as for the CFP, I mean, there's a lot of good teams out there. I mean, Alabama is one of them. Clemson is one of them. Surprisingly, Pittsburgh is one of them as well, being 3-0. But as for the Heisman, I think Trevor Lawrence has got it all the way. To kind of expand upon the Heisman Trophy as a whole in the past years, let's just say within this decade, which Heisman winners have lived up to their title and which have been a bust? One for one.
Are we talking about in the NFL, like?
Sure. Let's go in the NFL.
Following the next season, because most of these Heisman players just move on to the NFL.
Yeah.
Almost a year after that winning. I have to give credit to Lamar Jackson, which played at Louisville, now with the Baltimore Ravens in the NFL. He won the MVP trophy for the NFL this previous year, for the 2019 season.
Mm-hmm.
So he's been living up to the hype. Other players I can just think of right off the top of my head, which have won the Heisman, Joe Burrow. His second season just started. He's a rookie with Cincinnati Bengals.
Mm-hmm.
Kyler Murray. He won Offensive Player of the Year last year, being the number one overall pick with the Arizona Cardinals. I haven't seen too much of him. Like his year following his Heisman was okay. We saw Baker Mayfield also drafted number one with the Cleveland Browns. He hasn't really produced too much in the NFL. Can't think far back now. I still need to pick up to him. Johnny Manziel.
Yeah, I have the list right here. So you kind of named a lot of them already. So in 2010 was Cam Newton, followed by Robert RG3, then Johnny Manziel, then Jameis Winston, then Marcus Mariota, then Derrick Henry, then Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, and Joe Burrow. So you said.
So your list right there. I got to give it to Lamar and Derrick Henry as we're producing in the NFL right now. They probably had having the best years last year, and trying to push it forward for the 2020 season. Any names out there that you think are still producing that Heisman hype?
Within college or
within? We're talking about these former Heisman players. Are they still bringing that hype? Like, are they still bringing that same drive or the same type of play where they are now? We did list two players that are not playing that much. RG3 being a backup in Baltimore, and Johnny Manziel not in the league anymore.
Kind of to add to your list alongside Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, that man, Mark Ingram, probably being a badass running back in Baltimore, assisting Lamar Jackson as much as he can. In terms of who is still, I mean, Joe Burrow has so much to choose. Kyler Murray is on the rise, honestly, with this these past 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, 2, right? With
3 weeks.
With this past 3 weeks, those two obviously super young. They still have a lot to learn and a lot to do and a lot to prove within the NFL. And I would say I would go with your picks as well, Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. But as far as those that kind of dropped the ball, I mean, I'm a Florida State fan all the way, but Jameis has really been dropping the ball for countless times. And no matter if he even went to my team of the New Orleans Saints, he's just making bonehead moves. Even in college against Oregon, Marcus Mariota is right there in 2014. I mean, that fumble was not it, honestly.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Dropping the ball, I have to agree with Jameis. And then I had to talk about Johnny Manziel not holding his own in either the NFL, Canadian football, or even when he was with the AAF.
Yeah. Cam Newton, I mean, it's been a decade, man. And he
has won the NFL MVP. Has been to one Super Bowl.
Yeah.
and made it to playoffs countless times during his career.
Yeah, now that he's with the Patriots, I hope something good comes out of it. I mean, he's performing well alongside of the assets that the Patriots have acquired over the years. But I mean, those are really the good, solid ones: Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, and then Jameis Winston kind of dropping the ball. Marcus Mariota still kind of has time before reaching 10 years within the league, and then Kyler and Joe still have
able to bring his team to the playoffs twice. Has it been that franchise as losing the job to Ryan Tannehill and a 2-year deal with the Raiders backup, leading to him being placed on IR before the season even started?
What was the question? Sorry, I only heard half of it because I was still talking. But yeah, what was it?
It was not a question. I was just talking about Marcus Mariota.
Oh, okay.
Leading his team to playoffs a couple of times, but lost his job to Ryan Tannehill, and then was placed on IR after signing a contract with the Raiders.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the Titans organization didn't really have trust within Marcus Mariota, and hopefully, I mean, Carr is the number one option within the Raiders organization. Following, who is their backup quarterback? Oh no, it's Marcus, right? Or is it the other guy? It's Marcus, I think.
In where?
In the Raiders.
Nathan Peterman.
Damn. I don't know. Marcus still has time until his 10-year, and then we'll see what happens after in the next decade. But let's move on to the AP polls with top 25 football teams at this time. So I'll just name them off in order from 1 to 25. It's Clemson, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Auburn, Miami, Texas, Penn State, UCF, UNC, Texas A&M, Oregon, Cincinnati, Mississippi State, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, Wisconsin, LSU, Tennessee, BYU, Michigan, Pitt, and Memphis. Of these teams, do you think the Pac-12 and Big Ten teams deserve to be there after a 2-week or 3-week start already? Technically.
No teams that has not been on the has a record. Most notably, the highest team out there right now is being Ohio State, which are not going to scheduled to play until the end of October. They should be, if they want to be put there, I say in the 20s, if they really want to. We saw, let's see, let me give you a count really quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams in the top 25 that do not have a record right now. Well, a majority of them, the rest of the teams do have one game, 1 to 3 games already been played.
That's more
inside the thing. So a fifth of their AP top 25 are winless, lossless, not even a gameish. While the rest of them have played a game. If I just look in the top 4, which are going to the playoffs, if we still have the college football playoffs, Clemson 2-0, Alabama just played their first game 1-0, Florida 1-0, and Georgia also playing the first game 1-0.
3 of those teams are in the SEC, and they've started. I mean, I don't know where these polls. I don't know why these polls were taken so late.
Right now, I'm just praying until any polls comes out. I'm probably not looking to poll till mid-October, right before the Big Ten does come back. And even then, when the Big Ten comes back, I can see a big jump, like mainly from Ohio State winning their first game. Even though we have talked about that they have the weakest schedule in the Big Ten, which is just telling the Big Ten, like, hey, we're scheduling Ohio State to into the playoffs, giving them an easy A&O victory. We may see other clubs with A&O or 10-0, 9-0, however many games that they are playing. We know the Pac-12 playing a hope for 7-game thing. They should not almost crack. Even if they go 7-0, barely crack the top 10.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. When I first saw this list, I literally thought to myself, I was like, why are they haven't even played a game. Ohio State hasn't played a game. Penn State hasn't played a game. Oregon just they're not starting until the beginning of November, and then Wisconsin and Michigan are still in the Big Ten, and they're not starting until the end of October. I was just thinking, like, why are they in this poll? Like, what do reporters see in them? Just because they have potential and Heisman winners within Ohio State with Justin Fields, I don't understand what the thinking and logic is, because all of the other conferences have started. But I mean that's just my opinion. I mean, that's your opinion as well. Um, we both agree that they shouldn't really be there. I mean, obviously they should be probably in the top 30. I wouldn't even say top, not even the top 20. Like, I don't know. This year has just been weird with coronavirus, and it really hasn't been the best for sports. Of the top four that you named between Clemson, Alabama, Florida, and Georgia, who do you think has the most likelihood of going undefeated?
We probably see like SEC is always a tough country, so I feel like Alabama will have a loss this season. My top favorite out of those four teams are going to be Clemson. Trevor Lawrence, we talked about, is probably our heavy favorite to win the Heisman, and I could see them coming out and be another for the third straight season being perfect in the regular season. In the Trevor Lawrence's career with Clemson, he only has one loss, which was the national championship in 2019 against LSU. But this guy has been nearly perfect in his college career.
Yeah, I'd probably have to go with Bama's to oppose you, but these polls look good. I mean, aside from the Big Ten and Pac-12 additions to the polls, I mean, I hope they change within the next couple of weeks, but, you know, we never know. So today, guys, we speedily went through the MLB playoffs and, of course, Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier's charity fight. We went over Notre Dame situation with coronavirus and what Brian Kelly is doing to minimize that. The Tennessee Titans and Minnesota Vikings have closed their facilities due to coronavirus as well. We talked about the overview of the NBA bubble and how much how it's going to change from now until next season and the season that follows that. We talked about AP polls and Heisman watch for the NCAA and NCAA football. Do you have anything to say? Have anything to say, Kris, before we close out?
Yeah. So I want to know what everyone thinks about our podcast. So again, like to drop some knowledge articles down below, but also drop who's your Heisman favorite this year.
Yeah, I like that. That will get a wide variety of people, I hope. With that being said, guys, please subscribe to our channel, push notifications. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to our podcast, The Gameplan. Unfortunately, Kris is not able to be here today, but we have another guest, another local boy from Hawaii, Johnny Richardson. How you doing, my brother?
That's good, Brett. I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing well. So for this podcast, we kind of have a little shorter scope. But first things first, we met each other while we were both at Stanford. We met each other at the first meeting. How do in your eyes, in your perspective, when it comes to me and Kris, how do you think, or how do you see our relationship as both workers and as friends?
I mean, I would say that, you know, it's working with you guys was always a good time, man. It was never a dull moment, and especially like I feel like, you know, once you work a big event, like a big basketball event or like a big football game, it's like a different type of thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, especially if it goes well, like, you know, you can kind of trust the person, especially like in a professional setting, like that kind of stuff matters, especially like within collegiate athletics specifically, I would say.
Yeah. I remember, I think it was just football set up for us when we first started working together. It was a fun time.
Yeah.
Like we would always partner up together because I mean, we both are from Hawaii, and yeah, it just made work more fun, and especially during basketball season when we started actually working together outside of football, we got to know each other a little bit more and talk more outside of, you know, our workspace. It did make it fun.
No, yeah, and then I'll just add something real quick too. And like in terms of working together, like especially when you're on the mainland. I mean, anybody from Hawaii knows this, but you don't exactly come across like many people from Hawaii that you didn't already meet. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like odds that you meet someone and come across the mainland, like that's higher, but someone you didn't meet yet. So that also made it easier to just vibe and get through the workday sometimes, especially some of the early mornings.
Yeah, especially like a lot of people in the mainland, they think that Hawaii is such a small island. And I'm like, you underestimate how many people know each other. And the fact that, and as you prove, we kind of prove that when we're in the mainland is like, I didn't know you, you didn't know me. When we introduced each other, we went to two different rival high schools, and that is one of the things we kind of bonded over. Um, let's transition into how where you grew up. You grew up in Eva Beach, which is down south. Um, where did you go to elementary and middle school before you transferred over to Punahou?
So I mean, I originally was grew up in Eva Beach, kind of like near Campbell High School. Oh, bro, I can't even remember like the like the elementary school I went out there. I would have to ask my parents for that. But essentially, when I was young, my we were living out there, and my mom. There used to be like these old public school lotteries, and I won. Like I just got lucky and I won, so I was allowed to go out of school, like go out of district. Like how it works to get
Mhm.
to be in your district.
Yeah.
So then, for the first couple of years, I actually went to Noelani, which was like down the road here in Manoa. But like doing that drive in the mornings from Eva Beach to Manoa was tough. That got tough
Yeah.
quick. And then, but then after that, at some point, like middle school time, I got into Punahou, and then the rest is history. Stayed there the rest of the time.
Yeah. So you went to Punahou, which is probably football-wise one of the biggest schools aside from St. Louis. Um, notice within Hawaii State. What was it like playing probably one of the best teams in the nation and probably the best teams in Hawaii?
I mean, I would say, it's one thing because growing up, like at least so going to Punahou, you would have, you were always playing football, like whether it be intermediate, JV. So it's like you kind of just like became friends like through the team, and then you just kind of kept moving up with your friends. Like eventually, when you get to varsity, and it never really crosses your mind until you start beating certain teams and like you start hitting certain markers. And then even for me, like if I'm gonna be honest, like I never was like a starter, and eventually got some playing time my senior year, but like after a certain while, then like I would say it was kind of surreal, especially like winning states and that kind of thing. It gets, especially growing up here, because Punahou was good, but you always had your Kahukus, your St. Louis's, so it was always kind of tough to break through. So then when it finally break through, that was kind of a good moment to see, and beating some mainland teams along the way is nice as well. So
Yeah. I mean, even though you're a rival school, I mean, I support Hawaii 100%, especially when we play
yeah,
mainland teams. So you went to Punahou, graduated from Punahou in 2015, 1 year earlier than me, and then you went to Linfield College, which is in Oregon.
I
Uh,
went to Lewis and Clark.
Lewis and
Lewis and
Clark,
Clark.
sorry.
No
Um,
worries, you're good.
yeah, Lewis and Clark. Tell me how that experience was probably through the first couple of years and how like that transition from uh, living in Hawaii all your life to moving to another state that you were basically new in.
It was interesting because I mean, obviously coming from Puno, it was super competitive both academically and athletically, and especially like football wise, like coming from a school where I think in high school the entire time I was on the team, at least we had only lost 3 games in 3 years. So, and to go on to Lewis and Clark, like we were not good. You know what I'm saying? Like we really were not good.
Mhm.
And that was kind of an adjustment in the sense that it was tough trying to see the other side of the coin. It's like okay, how are we gonna do just to like get one win? Like what do we got to do? And
Yeah.
then from the academic side, it was even going from I think there's like a stigma that if you just come from Punahou, you're going to succeed and go do well in college. And yeah, Punahou does prepare you for a lot of that stuff, but that's not guaranteed. Like even for me, just transitioning to the mainland,
Mhm.
like I struggled initially, but it but eventually you find your niche, and like I'd be lying to especially any local boy here, like it saying that it's not tough, because it is tough, like transitioning over to the mainland, especially when you grew up here your whole life. But I would say that it provides you a lot of opportunities that, that might not necessarily happen. Like even for me, after I was done playing football in college, like got to study abroad in Dublin, like on scholarship and that kind of stuff. And I remember when I was leaving the airport here, people were telling me like, "Oh, you're going to Dublin, bro. Have a good time in England." Like they didn't even know like where the city was, but it's like that kind of stuff. That's the opportunities you might get when you go to the mainland. That's kind of what you're chasing, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
How many local boys went to Lewis and Clark?
I mean, when I was first there, I would say there was. Let me think. I was probably one of four at the time. One of four, one of five. I was probably like one of 10 Hawaii people in the whole school. And then to even further that down, I was probably one of four Japanese Americans in the entire school as well. So that's obviously every school is different. If I went to like Pacific, there's a lot of Hawaii
A lot
kids.
of fun.
Transition probably would have been easier. But that's kind of what out of the schools I got recruited to, and the schools I got into, that was kind of the school that had the most academic rigor. So my parents, when I talked to them, they're just like, just go try it. They were saying, it's not a fallback plan, but home is always home. You can always come back if you need to recover and try and do something else. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I ended up there. I completely forgot your question, like mid sentence. I just started talking, but I hope that answered whatever you were saying.
It's just how many local boys were there at the time
Yeah,
you answered it.
yeah.
So you graduated Linfield 2 years ago, right? Or sorry,
Lewis and
Lewis and
Clark.
Clark 2 years ago. I have that on my notes.
two, 2 years ago, yeah.
Yeah,
In 29, well, almost 2 years ago. I mean, technically 2019, but I'm like two classes removed.
yeah,
If that makes it. So, yeah.
yeah. And then you went over to the USF program where you moved down to the Bay Area. How was that transition from from Oregon, with kind of a secluded place where it's a little bit quiet, to going out to Bay Area where there's a lot of rush and a lot of sports is um, deep within the Bay Area culture, and then obviously business. And how did you adapt from going to from such like a slow place to a very high, fast pace area?
So I would say, especially going back to, I mean, I feel like we keep circulating around, like, if you're a local boy trying to make that decision, like going in the mainland, I would say going to a place, now that I look back on it, going to a place that's like Portland, where you're kind of in a smaller city,
Hmm.
it's not like necessarily one of the big metropolitan cities. Going there for 4 years helped me kind of see, this is what kind of like a snippet of the mainland was. And then moving to the Bay Area, I would actually say the transition between Portland to the Bay Area was easier than the transition from Hawaii to Portland was, because I already kind of had an idea of like, how the mainland functioned. And especially, you know, going from Portland, which was a good sports market. I mean, you have the Blazers, you have some good teams there. Going down to the Bay Area, there is like some transition there, especially going to Oakland. Like it's like you said, a lot faster pace. But I would say the transition coming from the Northwest to the Bay was easier than coming from Hawaii to the Northwest. Yeah, that's what I would say.
That's kind of interesting. When I
Yeah,
first got there, yeah, it was really fast. I mean, barely like going to the city, and I like kind of where my little area was, but I also like being home a lot. But after I got accustomed to it, obviously it got a little bit easier. Um, and then obviously, as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, we met at Stanford, and then you applied for internship at Berkeley. In comparison, obviously they're both rivals, but comparison job wise, how would you compare? Obviously, you haven't done any office work within Stanford, but like the atmosphere at Berkeley versus the atmosphere at Stanford, how would you describe that?
I would say that both are great. To be completely honest, I mean, both I've had good experiences at both. I would never say that one is better than the other. To be completely honest, both of my experiences at both schools have been great so far. And I mean, obviously, I'm not necessarily done at Cal, but it's been a great experience. I learned a lot as well, because they're such big schools, right? Like they're growing up here. There's not necessarily an opportunity to. I mean, you could if you have a foot in the door at you could do something of internship there, but
Yeah.
there that's not like a big Power Five school. So it is interesting for at both schools to see the experience of how does a Power Five school function, and I'd say both experiences have been equally as good.
So let's move on to. Oddly enough, you are a New York-based team fan. Where did that come from?
Yeah. So I mean, I grew up. My dad. So I mean, obviously, growing up here, you can kind of choose, but people tend to have like some type of tie, right? Like,
Yeah.
you have some type of tie to some teams. Um, my dad is born and raised on Long Island. Grew up all the Long Island teams. Grew up in Queens. So for me, in New York, you obviously it's like how do you pick between the Yankees and the Mets, the Jets and the Giants, like the Knicks and the Nets. For me, I mean, my dad was a Jets fan, a Knicks fan, and a Mets fan. Obviously, when I was a kid, the Nets were still in New Jersey, so that was an easier choice, right? If you're a New York guy,
Yeah.
because they weren't even there at the time. And then the way my dad explained it is it's kind of borough based. So if you're from certain boroughs, that's just kind of the team you grew up with. And my dad grew up as a Jets and Mets fan. So that's how I ended up as fans of their team. Could be better right now.
And
we'll
just partial on baseball and NBA, or mostly
what'd you say?
just partial on say Jets and Knicks fan, right?
Jets and Knicks, and then Mets fan. So Jets, Knicks, and Mets are all three of those are my teams for sure.
So out of all those three, I mean, some are not doing well than the others. Who do you think would have a better chance of winning a championship in the near future?
Oh, jeez. Oh my God, that is a tough question. Um, I'm not sure, to be honest. If I have to pick one, I would say that the Mets are closer than any of those three teams just because of their pitching.
Mhm.
Their pitching alone. I mean, they had a bunch of injuries, and it's a COVID season. It's like half a season,
Mhm.
But I would say the Mets are the team that have the biggest potential. Now, with that being said, if the Knicks are, I'll just give a rundown of all three. The Knicks are a team where you have a bunch of young prospects, and it's just a matter of like, are these young prospects going to develop into something?
Mhm.
You have your RJ Barrett,
Yeah.
even though he's a couple years older. Your Dennis Smith Jr., whoever, someone like that. It's just a matter of time. Now we hire Tom Thibodeau. Is he going to be able to get the most out of these players and obviously see what we get in the draft? The Jets is ridiculous, bro. I'll be honest. The Jets is just ridiculous. I don't understand. Well, I mean, part of it, at least this season, I knew they weren't going to be great, heading into the season. That's just been part of the rebuilding phase. I mean, part of it's been a mix of, they were, besides the 49ers, I think they're the most injured team in the NFL.
Yeah.
So that doesn't help anybody. And in my opinion, I just think it's time for Adam Gase to go. I know, obviously, I'm just a fan. I don't know anything inside like the situation, but I just feel like some of the decisions he's made just doesn't make sense. Straight up doesn't make sense. I just don't understand. And I feel bad for Sam Darnold because I think Sam Darnold is a very talented player, and I think he could be really good. And I just hope that the Jets can put more pieces around him.
What do you think about the thought of the Knicks acquiring LaMelo Ball in this upcoming draft?
LaMelo, I think LaMelo has more skills coming into the league than Lonzo Ball did with Lonzo Ball coming out. I think LaMelo is a more well-rounded player, and I know a lot of people might not necessarily agree with that, but I don't know. I just have a feeling he's more polished coming into this draft. I don't think the Knicks are going to take him just because of the spot that they're at from the lottery. They got like the 8th pick or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily, see them taking him. Would I be mad at them taking him? No. I mean, they need a guy who can just put up points. I mean, that's part of the biggest problems. They just need a scorer. So.
Well, let's move on to obviously we're just talking about our high schools. I went to Kamehameha, you went to Puno, and then obviously the third one is St. Louis. I have the 4 years that you were there at Punahou, high school wise. You faced Were you on varsity for your freshman year or no?
So initially, when I'm pretty sure this was the case. So in ILH, the initial rule, I'm pretty sure they changed this now, was that you couldn't be on varsity as a freshman. You had to play either JV or intermediate or like whatever the option at your school was offered.
Mm,
That was the one difference if you went to public school and private school.
yeah.
But after that, I was on varsity from sophomore to senior year.
Okay. So I believe I have this right. You played Kahuku and both in 2011 and 2012, Punho did. And then you played Milani and then you played Milani the year after that. You guys went 1 for 4 of those 4 years. Obviously, Kahuku, one of the biggest football schools up north, and Milani, probably one of the best central recruiting schools in the OIA. Obviously, Punho winning in 2013, 24, or the 20, yeah, 2013, 2014 year, um, probably being, I would think, one of your most prized championship games. How did the other three feel in terms of being one a player and two of being a student from Punahou and probably after taking the most shit from everyone of the other schools?
So I would say that I mean, obviously the first one I wasn't on varsity. I don't want to speak for
Mhm.
anybody
Yeah.
anybody there. I'm not completely sure. I mean, I was there watching the game. I remember, and it was a close game.
Mhm.
Huku's such a good school, man. In terms of football, their mentality, how they play, just their physicality. They're very very good. And then the sophomore year, to be completely honest, being a sophomore, you're a baby on the team. Like
Yeah.
you don't really get much playing time and anything like that. But I know the amount of work that went into that, and to lose that game the way we did was definitely tough. But for me, it was at this, for me, and I know the other people in our grade, we were like, of course, we were, heartbroken that the seniors didn't get the win that they deserved and all of that. But we figured we had something, and we had a couple more shots at it. And then obviously 2013, everything came to fruition, and that felt like kind of redemption, right? Like for the
Mhm.
previous two, regardless of whatever, because I know Kahuku had some issues that year in terms of just like winning games and stuff like that. So regardless if we were playing, it didn't matter. If you got to that point, we needed to win and we needed to beat you guys. So I mean, and that's what it came down to. So, and obviously that was a big moment. My senior year was definitely tough. Obviously, that was definitely tough. The way we lost, but I mean, hats off to Milani, man. I mean, they were dogs. Like I mean,
Oh yeah.
they were they've always kind of played like that even before
Mhm.
before us, and then even after us now. Like I mean, they were a great team too. I mean everything came all together for them that night. Do I think we should have won? Obviously I'm biased. I think we should have won, but like I said, credit to them. They were a good team. So
Honestly, I thought you guys would have won too, but obviously that Boise State play and then that flea flicker and how many times they got it to Kalakaua Timoteo, Bronson. My God, don't remember his last name, but Bronson, and then the running back Baba Malapai. I mean, they're just. I mean, Mackenzie Milton was Mackenzie behind on the
ye-
center, or was
I think so. I think it was Milton. I don't think Dylan Gabriel was playing yet. I think Gabriel was
he was
probably the
before
backup.
Milton?
Huh?
Wasn't there one before Milton, or your
I
senior?
can't. No, I can't. The one that I distinctly remember was Milton. I remember Milton
Yeah.
was the guy that we played both years. Yeah.
I mean, just their recruiting process at Milani. I mean, how many guys they got out of outside of Milani. I mean, it was really impressive. Honestly, I thought you guys would have won. Honestly, I can't talk about winning championships. I mean, the 4 years I was there, we were all trash, honestly. But now, like the full cycle has come over, like St. Louis now being one of the dominant schools there. When you can't like when do you predict like their downfall will be? I mean, they're a super hot commodity now within football. When you see like maybe Kamehameha or Pono coming back in the championship picture aside from St. Louis.
I mean, I think it's so tough in the sense that you know it feels like, I don't follow high school sports as much as I used to because I'm pretty removed from it now, being having already graduated college and being in a master's program.
Mhm.
I do know that I know at some point that you know obviously St. Louis was the best team this last year, but then Pono was ranked number 2, but they didn't get into the state tournament because of the way the bids work.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense to me. I think I understand that, obviously there are a different set of rules for private schools, and private schools recruit, so they have a competitive advantage. But I just think, based on the league and who they play, if you're ranked number 2, you should at least get a shot in the tournament. So, but with that being said, man, I'm not 100% sure. St. Louis is just they're great. They're machines. You know what I'm saying? Like they got their system down. I do think Ponoho hangs in there. I think they got a shot, but in the foreseeable future, it's tough to say. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah. Same as you. I only follow once in a while, only when probably Kamehameha is doing good, or just randomly looking sometimes at how they're doing. But I don't. It's hard to say when the tide will turn over St. Louis. Let's go into something that we kind of bonded over, which is MMA. You got started with, was it Thai boxing or was it kickboxing in Portland?
So for me, I actually, like, in between seasons, me and one of my best friends who we went to Pono together, we, in the off season, for me to just stay in shape, we would box at Palolo boxing gym.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, like after I was done playing football, I did a few years of Muay Thai and kickboxing, and that was, that's kind of, I still train. I still love training. Obviously COVID, like, it literally shut down all the gyms. Like, so training has been tough, but yeah, that's what I've done, like, in terms from a martial arts standpoint.
Yeah. Were you able to watch UFC 253 last weekend?
That's Adesanya and Costa, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I did. And what did you think about that?
I only watched the highlights. I mean, I'm a not diehard fan, but I'm a big fan of Adesanya. But he was just kicking the shit out of Costa's left leg, and I mean, it really was his downfall. But like, Costa was like showboating too much, and I was like, dude, just fucking try and fight instead of mocking the fuck out of Adesanya, because he's gonna kill you right now.
I think going into that card, I mean, there were two fights at the top of the card, right? You had Adesanya and Costa, and you had Blachowicz and Reyes. So, from Blachowicz and Reyes' standpoint, that was actually, out of all the fights on the main card, that was the most surprising to me, because I thought Dominic Reyes would be able to use his footwork and be able to cut angles the way he kind of did against John Jones. And especially if you look at his fight against Chris Weidman, he was able to step back and hit him with that left hand. I thought Reyes' footwork and his range would be a lot of problems for Jan. Not thinking that Jan couldn't win. Jan has crazy knockout power. He definitely could have won the fight. I just thought that Reyes had more tools. But I mean, it's just about who puts it together that night, right? And I mean, Jan had a good game plan going to the body, stung him real bad. I mean, he had a bruise, a giant bruise that ran across, half his torso, basically. And that was surprising to me that Jan was able to put Reyes away like that. So yeah, and then Adesanya and Costa, I mean, going into the fight, I was super excited for the fight. I think Stylebender is the man. I think Stylebender is the truth. That dude is the truth.
Yeah.
And the way he fights is so calculated, and he really is a sniper in there. And I just thought that, not taking anything away from Costa, I mean, Costa he had 5 UFC fights going in the fight, right? And his most impressive one was probably his fight of the night with Yoel Romero. And anytime he beat Yoel, it's impressive, but it's just, the way he fights is just all volume. And I know it's popular to call him a knockout artist. He's not really a knockout artist if you think about it. When he stops people, it's because he overwhelms people with the volume of punches that he has. If you look at his Uriah Hall fight and some of the other ones, and even the Romero fight, he didn't stop him, but he won based on volume. I just thought going into the fight that, it's like a tree walking into a buzzsaw. Adesanya is just going to light him up as Costa tries to close the distance, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think Stylebender's the truth. It's going to be tough for someone to beat him in that division specifically. He might be there for a while.
So last weekend was Holly Holmes, and then I think the next event is UFC 254 with Khabib headlining, I believe.
So that's the next big one. So we got the fight night coming up between Corey Sandhagen and Marlon Moraes, which is this weekend. That fight is obvious number one contender fight for the bantamweight division. I mean, Aljamain Sterling looked phenomenal. Aljo looked, he submitted Corey Sandhagen in like 30 seconds, which is shocking. Sandhagen was a man coming in, beating everybody, beat a Sun Sao. He was looking good. And then now, so Sterling is definitely going to fight Piotr Jan, the current, bantamweight champion. That makes sense. But I mean, whoever wins this fight, I mean, they're right there, especially Marlon. That would be Marlon's a dynamic striker. That would be a great matchup for, either if Sandhagen or Moraes won. I would actually, but, for that fight, I think Sandhagen is probably a little more crafty. And I think Moraes got not fully exposed, but in both the Cejudo and Aldo fights, he tends to gas a little bit, right? He's so explosive that he explodes, but then he tends to gas. And Sandhagen's cardio is insane. So I think that's a fight in favor of Sandhagen. And then Khabib and Gaethje, I mean, every time people were like, this is the guy that's going to get Khabib, it's never happened. Nobody's been able to stop that guy. That guy is, if he gets like hold of you, it's problems. But I do think Gaethje is going to call. I'm not going to say Gaethje is going to win. That's one of the things about Khabib. I'll believe it when I see it. In terms of when he loses, I feel like you can't bet against that guy. But Gaethje, he's got the one X factor, which is he's calculated, but can also cause chaos. He can cause scenarios where Khabib might not find himself in, and Gaethje can drag you into deep water. And the thing that he has is legitimate one punch knockout power, as well as he was an all-American wrestler. He just chooses not to use it. In this fight, he's going to have to use it. He's going to have to try and land that shot. And I think he has a good shot. I think people will be surprised. I think Gaethje's going to do a lot better than people think. I don't want to go as far to say that he wins, but I mean, I know I was just saying, everybody keeps saying it's his toughest matchup. I think Justin Gaethje is going to be his toughest matchup up to date. I think Poirier and McGregor both had success, but I think Gaethje is going to be a problem for Khabib.
Well, speaking of McGregor, I think it was last weekend I got the announcement that he is going up. He wants to fight Pacquiao. When I first saw that, I was like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you going back? You're retired. Stay retired. But what do you think of this decision? Like, why do you think he wants to fight Pacquiao and get into boxing so badly after losing against Floyd Mayweather after all that talk?
So, I mean, I think, McGregor is, I think, so he came into the year, right, at the beginning of the year, which seems like forever now because of COVID. He stopped Cowboy in 45 seconds, and he had this plan to move forward and get that Khabib rematch. I think at the end of the day, I think that's what he wants the most. Yeah, he wants that Khabib rematch. And he said at the beginning of the year, this was going to be his season. He was going to, fight Cowboy, and then, whoever the number one contender next at that time was either going to be Tony Ferguson or Gaethje, fight that guy and then beat that guy and then fight Khabib. But none of that happened because the UFC, when you have a Conor McGregor fight, it would be huge on pay-per-view now, but like you want fans in the stands, obviously. Like you want to make as much money as you can. And I think that's kind of been the divide between McGregor and the UFC, in the sense that, McGregor wants to fight, but the UFC doesn't want to like give away all that cash if McGregor fights with no fans. Yeah. And I think McGregor was getting frustrated. And I think in terms of the Pacquiao fight, I mean, well, one, I'll say that, I don't think Dana White's a good guy in any sense. But I do kind of say, like, bro, you don't like just release DMs like that. Like that's messed up in my opinion. And Conor did that, so they're kind of in a weird spot right now. But at least in terms, I don't know if the Pacquiao fight's going to happen. I think it's. What'd you say?
It's set.
No, it's not fully set yet. It's not fully set. There would be a full spread. Like I don't think it's fully set yet, but it seems like it's got legitimate momentum. And if it does fight, I mean, if he did good against Floyd Mayweather, and Floyd, first you got to give Conor credit, right? I mean, the ball's on the guy to fight, record wise the greatest boxer of all time in his first professional boxing fight. That takes balls. and he did pretty decent. Like as much as people want to hate on Connor, he did pretty decent.
Mm-hmm.
I just think Pacquiao's a worse matchup, man. In terms of because Floyd, he's very defensive, and he does win, and he stopped Connor, but it was a mix of Connor, gassing out. It's not like Floyd's a one-punch knockout guy because of the problem that he's had with his hands. But Pacquiao's different. Pacquiao knock you the fuck out.
Yeah.
Like Pacquiao, that's your game. Like, not saying that Connor can't catch him moving in, but I mean, this is boxing. Like, I mean, Pacquiao just beat Keith Thurman. Like, Keith Thurman was, 29-0 heading into the fight. I mean, Pacquiao's still at, he's older, but he's still up there as, one of the best in that division.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think, I mean, money-wise, good on Connor. He's going to make tons and tons of money for that fight.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of, matchup-wise, I think it's a worse matchup to fight Pacquiao than it is to Mayweather. Because like I said, Pacquiao can crack. That's the one thing he still has pop in his hands. And, that's a fight that Connor could lose badly.
Mm-hmm. So to transition to our last thing that I like to repeatedly do with our guests, I have a list of 20 different professional athletes that were born and raised in Hawaii or played in Hawaii or play for other leagues around in the mainland. Just want to get your opinion on the top, like ranking the top 20 that I could find. Yeah, let's just start with your 20 and then go down from there.
So, I mean, looking at this list, and then kind of looking at, what you told me.
Yep.
I would say that this list is pretty good. I mean, it'd be tough to rank all of these guys like in an order. Like there's no way I could ever rank any of these guys in an order. And it's like when you have Obama on the list, you got to put, you got to put president number one, right? But I mean, in terms of, for me growing up, I would say out of all the guys here, there have been some beasts in the NFL and all across the leagues. But I mean, he's not. I would say BJ's the man, right? Like
top. I mean, out of order. Like, give me like a top 5.
Top 5 out of order. Got to be Max. Max Holloway is on that list. BJ is on that list. Okay. BJ Penn. Obviously I'm a little biased, but Defoe, DeForest Buckner, I thought the 49ers are absolutely crazy for trading him.
They were going to win last time.
I was like, that was shocking.
Yeah.
What's interesting with Tua and then Marcus is that, obviously, you could say Marcus, but I mean, Tua, he hasn't played in the NFL yet, but man, I mean, Tua had such a phenomenal career in college. It's kind of hard not to put him on the list. So I'd say, probably sneak Tua in there. Was that 4 or 5? I wasn't even counting. I was just talking. Yeah. That was what?
That was 4.
That's 4. And honestly, Duke Hanamoku. I mean, anybody growing up here, whether you're Kanaka or not, you know Duke. And then so I would say, I saw him. I didn't see him initially on the list, but I mean, he's the OG. It's got to be him as number 1. But I mean, BJ Penn, in my opinion, when he was at the top of his game, I mean, and especially in the UFC, but just across any person on that list, I mean, he was phenomenal. He was just really was, he created the term just scrap, any weight, any time. Like that out of that list, I would say my personal favorite is probably BJ, but Max is also, right there as well. I mean, he's awesome too. So hard ranking this list.
So you have BJ, Max, Duke, DeForest Buckner, and Marcus, right?
And Tua. I'd say Tua.
Oh, Tua. Okay.
Yeah.
Dude, it was so hard to just find the list. I mean, majority of them are going to be a part of the NFL because it's a football state. I thought I would throw in Michelle Wee and Elimele McFarland in there. Barack Obama.
I would say too, though. Like, I mean, obviously, you don't want to be biased again because she went to Pinal, but Michelle Wee is, she was top of her game too. I mean, she was phenomenal. And I think you had Colton Wong. I know Colton Wong is amazing as well. But, obviously I'm a little biased. Like, I grew up watching combat sports and playing football. So that's just the guy that's going to be on my list.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, Duke has to be number one. Duke's number one. He's OG. He's OG right there.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Thank you, Johnny, for coming on. Appreciate you and just talking about Hawaii sports and talking about a lot of things that both of us are interested in. Before we end, guys, please subscribe, or like and share this video and subscribe to our channel. Click the push notification button so you get notified that our videos are up every single day. With that being said, guys, we'll see you guys next time.